This happened a few months ago. I've been a night shift nurse at St. Mercy's Hospital for over 5 years. I took the extra shifts after my divorce. It kept me busy, but nights could feel strange. The lights flickered overhead and shadows danced down the hallways. It was too quiet, especially when there weren't many patients. One night during my rounds, I walked past room 212. There was an old man I didn't recognize. He lay frail and whispering. I leaned in closer, thinking he needed help, but his words came out in riddles. It felt odd. His eyes were wide and looked right through me. He seemed urgent, like he wanted to say something very important. Later, I could hear him mumbling again. "She waits for you in the shadows," he repeated like a chant. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the medication messing with him. Still, my skin tingled with unease. The next few weeks I encountered other strange patients. Each one had their own bizarre story about a woman in white lurking in the corners. I listened, my heart pounding. They spoke of her with trembling voices. "She tugs at the curtain, waiting," one patient said. I wondered if it was the lack of sleep getting to me or if something else was going on. I stood in the break room one night, trying to make sense of it all. I shared my thoughts with another nurse, but she just laughed it off. "It's just hospital stories," she said. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I could still feel the chill in my body as I passed room 212. I decided I had to find the truth. I walked the dim hallways, listening for whispers. The flickering lights made it hard to focus. I thought I saw a figure in white dart past, but it was just a trick of the light. Maybe it was nothing. Then, late one night, I found her. She stood at the end of the hall, staring at me. I couldn't see her face clearly. "Why don't you say hello?" she asked softly. Her voice echoed. I felt cold all over. My mouth went dry. I wanted to run but couldn't move. Suddenly the lights went out, plunging everything into darkness. I felt the weight of her gaze on me. What did she want? I turned to run but heard her whisper, "You can't leave." Panic surged through me. Then, I heard my name. "Lucas." It came from behind me. I spun around. No one was there. My heart raced. Had I imagined it? I felt so alone. In that quiet, dark hospital, the only thing I could trust was my instinct to get away. But where could I go? The shadows closed in around me, and it felt like they were watching too. I bolted down the hallway, my breath quickening with every step. I could still hear her voice whispering my name, echoing in my ears. I stumbled into the nurse's station, almost colliding with the desk. There was no one there, just the dull hum of the overhead lights. I pressed my palms against the counter, trying to steady myself. My heart drummed in my chest like a warning. The sudden chill lingered around me, and I could almost feel her presence easing into the shadows once more. I needed to refocus. "She can't trap you," I whispered to myself, repeating it like a mantra. But deep down, doubt creeped in. What if she already had? I grabbed the nurse's logbook and flipped through it, searching for any notes about the patients in room 212. Maybe there was something I missed, some connection I hadn't seen. But all I found were the same old entries, descriptions of symptoms and medications. Nothing out of the ordinary. Yet the more I read, the more uneasy I felt. I felt like I was being watched. The air grew thicker, charged with a heaviness that made every hair on my body stand up. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see her silhouette looming behind me. Nothing. Just then, the hospital intercom crackled to life. "Attention all staff, we have a new admission in room 212. I froze. A new patient? The old man was gone? I turned on my heel and rushed back to the hallway, adrenaline pumping through my veins. As I approached room 212, my heart sank. The door stood slightly ajar and a warm light spilled out. I hesitated for a moment, recalling the old man's warnings. But curiosity got the better of me. My hand shook as I pushed the door wide open. Inside, a woman sat in the patient's bed, her dark hair spilling over the pillow. She wore a hospital gown, but her skin was too pale, almost luminous. I blinked, trying to make sense of her presence. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaky. She turned her gaze to me, her eyes filled with an unsettling calm. "You brought me here. she said softly. The weight of her words settled in my chest. I've waited for you. A chill coursed down my spine. What are you talking about? I stammered. She pointed towards the curtains, barely moving, but it felt like 1,000 fingers reached out to beckon me closer. Look, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped closer, against my better judgment. My heartbeat echoed in my ears as I reached for the curtain. Just then, the lights flickered and dimmed again. Shadows danced at the edges of the room, warping my sense of reality. Then everything went dark. Panic surged within me again. I was about to turn back when I heard the woman's voice, clear and urgent. You'll understand soon. You're part of this. With a deep breath, I pushed through the darkness, ready to confront whatever it was that linked us. There was something I needed to find out, something that would explain these encounters. But as I reached for the wall to steady myself, I felt something brush against my arm, a chilling touch that sent me reeling back. I stumbled into the corridor, gasping. I needed to escape, but as I turned to run back to the nurse's station, a heavy fog enveloped the hall, and all I could hear was her whisper, "You can't run from your fate." Just then, there was a loud crash behind me. I spun around, heart racing. Someone or something was coming. I didn't wait to see what was coming. My instincts kicked in, and I bolted down the corridor, the fog swirling around my feet like a living thing. My mind raced as I mentally traced the layout of the hospital. I needed to get to the main lobby, where there were other people. It felt like my only chance. I could still hear the faint whispers, growing louder, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. You can't run from your fate, they echoed. I shook my head, trying to clear the noise from my mind, but it pressed in on me. As I reached the stairs, my foot met a puddle of something slick and I nearly slipped. I caught myself just in time, scrambling to regain my balance. The dim light above flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and twist. I took the stairs 2 at a time, adrenaline pumping through my veins. By the time I reached the first floor, the whispers had faded into a distant hum, replaced by the pounding of my heart. I burst through the doors into the lobby, expecting to find solace in the presence of other staff or patients. But the room was empty, eerily quiet, except for the buzzing of fluorescent lights overhead. I leaned against the reception desk trying to catch my breath. There was no sign of life. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. Nothing but silence answered. I glanced back towards the hallway I had come from, a feeling of dread settling deep in my stomach. That's when I noticed a small shadow in the corner of my vision. Turning sharply, I saw a figure standing near the entrance, just outside the glass doors. The dim light illuminated a small, frail-looking man. He wore a long coat that hung off him like it was 2 sizes too big, and his hair was a wild mess of white. "Help me," he croaked, voice trembling like leaves in the wind. A surge of compassion twisted in my chest, but instinct told me to be cautious. "What's wrong?" I asked, inching toward him, not daring to step outside. "They took her," he muttered, eyes darting nervously. "You must find her. They're coming for you, too." "Who?" I pressed, a growing fear tightening my throat. He pointed behind me. "The shadows. They want you." I whipped around, heart racing again. I didn't see anything, but the air shifted, becoming colder. The hairs on my arms stood on end as a sense of being watched returned. "Please," he continued, voice cracking. "They'll trap you like the others if you don't act fast." He looked me straight in the eye, urgency written all over his face. "It's not just about you, it's about her." A loud crash shattered the tense silence, and the windows rattled as if something unseen had slammed against the door. Panic filled the man's face. I stumbled back, torn between wanting to help him and the primal urge to flee. "Run!" he shouted, and I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and ran back towards the hallway, the echoes of his voice fading behind me. I had to get back to room 212. Maybe I could understand what was happening, why these strangers were seeking me out, and why the shadows lurked. But the question gnawed at me. What was I supposed to find? And was I running towards safety, or deeper into a trap? I ran down the darkened hallway, my breath coming in quick bursts. Each step felt heavier, weighed down by an invisible force. I could still feel the man's terrified gaze on me, a reminder that whatever he was warning me about was real. My mind raced with questions, but the most pressing one was, what did he mean by they? As I reached the door to room 212, my fingers trembled with apprehension. I paused briefly, glancing back over my shoulder, half expecting to see shadows creeping up the hall. But there was only darkness. The silence pressed against me, suffocating. I pushed the door open, the creak of the hinges echoing in the stillness. The room was dim, the only light coming from the flickering bulb above. I stepped inside, my heart pounding louder than ever. The bed was empty. A faint, lingering smell of antiseptic hung in the air, but I didn't notice anyone. No patients, no staff. Just the bed sheets rumpled and untouched. I walked further into the room, searching for any clue about what had happened. My fingers traced the edge of the bedside table, and that's when I saw it. A small silver locket resting in the corner. I picked it up, feeling its cool weight in my palm. Something about it tugged at my memory, but I couldn't place it. I opened it, and inside was a picture of a young girl smiling brightly. The sight made my stomach twist. Was she the one the man referred to? Who was she? My thoughts swirled like the fog in the hallway. A loud thud resonated from the hallway, snapping me back to reality. I dropped the locket back onto the table, barely keeping it from clattering to the floor. I turned towards the door, dread creeping into my chest. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist beyond the frame, darker than the surrounding darkness. I had to know what was going on. I felt a pull towards the unknown, a strange compulsion I couldn't explain. But as I stepped back into the hallway, the noise grew louder. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing against the tile. They weren't mine. In an instant, my instincts kicked in again. If I had any hope of uncovering the truth, I needed to confront whatever was out there. I crept down the hall, the footsteps shadowing my movement, always a beat behind. Then, just as I reached the stairs, I saw a figure emerge from the darkness. It was a nurse, her uniform stained and torn. She looked impossibly pale, her eyes wide and vacant. "Help. Me," she whispered, voice barely a breath. "Are you okay?" I stammered, uncertainty pricking at my resolve. But before she could speak again, she pointed to my left. They're close." My heart dropped. I had to get moving, fast. I glanced back, the specter of the strange man and his warnings flooding my mind. No one else was around, but I felt the weight of unseen watchers pressing in on me. I turned away from her, moving as quickly as I dared. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out entirely, plunging me into complete blackness. The sudden silence was deafening. I stumbled forward, trying to find the wall to guide me. My heart raced. I could hear my breath echoing in my ears, loud enough to drown out everything else. I had to get out. I had to escape, but panic clawed at my gut. I could just be running deeper into danger. Just when I thought I couldn't take another second, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the hallway again. But as I looked back, the nurse was gone. The air felt charged with tension. I was not alone. Someone, or something, was still watching. And I had a feeling it wasn't finished with me yet. I forced myself to move forward, gripping the edge of the wall for stability. Each step felt heavier, my pulse racing. I couldn't shake the image of the nurse's vacant eyes and her whispered warning. Whoever, or whatever, was close, sent a shiver racing down my spine. As I reached the staircase, I felt an unsettling chill seep into the air. The flickering bulbs above did little to ward off the darkness creeping back in. I paused, catching my breath. It was time to leave. I needed fresh air, a moment of clarity away from these haunted halls. I took a deep breath and began to descend. The echo of my footsteps filled the stairwell. But then I heard something else. A whispering, muted and distant, like a memory I couldn't grasp. I stopped, straining to listen. "Help us. Please." The words were layered, almost overlapping each other. I shook my head, my heart pounding louder. I hurried down the stairs, desperate to escape the shadows. When I hit the ground floor, the whispering fell silent, replaced by the almost deafening sound of my heartbeat. I looked around, but the lobby was empty too. Desks were abandoned, waiting for staff that would never return. I moved toward the entrance, but something caught my eye, a flicker of movement behind the reception desk. I approached cautiously. My gut tightened with every step. I peered behind the desk and saw a young man slumped over. His skin was ashen, and his breath came in quick, shallow gasps. "Help," he croaked, eyes bleary and unfocused. I knelt down next to him. "What happened? Are you all right?" He blinked, struggling to meet my gaze. They took her." His speech was slurred, but the horror in his eyes was clear. "The little girl. I tried to save her." "Who took her?" I asked, panic rising as he continued to struggle to speak. But before he could reply, the lights flickered once again. The man's eyes widened in fear. "They're coming." I had a moment of clarity and bolted upright, adrenaline from his words igniting a fight-or-flight response. I darted back towards the lobby doors, but the exit was locked tight, the glass reflecting my terrified expression. I turned back to the man, but he was gone, vanished into the shadows as if he had never been there at all. The air thickened, and the whispering returned, ripping through the silence like a warning bell. Suddenly I heard the sound of footsteps, or multiple footsteps, growing louder behind me. I whirled around, my heart racing. I was trapped. The shadows morphed, shifting and twisting as if alive, forming shapes that seemed almost humanoid. They moved closer, their intentions unclear but undeniably menacing. With no other choice, I sprinted towards the hallway leading deeper into the hospital, the darkness swallowing me whole. As I ran, desperation surged. I needed to find a way out and uncover the truth behind the whispers. And just as I spotted a flickering light ahead, I was knocked off my feet, hard against the cold floor. Darkness encroached again, but I managed to catch a glimpse. A figure towering over me, its face shrouded in shadow. "Help us," it said, voice echoing in the silence, resonating with a chilling familiarity. My breath stopped. This was just the beginning. I hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from my lungs, panic clawed at my throat as I tried to push myself up. The figure loomed over me, an indistinct shape in the dim light. "Who are you?" I managed to gasp. "Help us," it repeated, the voice a haunting echo that twisted my stomach. I felt an overwhelming need to flee, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, caught between terror and confusion. This wasn't just a stranger. This was something else. The air turned icy, and the flickering light struggled against the encroaching darkness. I felt the shadows closing in, tendrils creeping around my feet, pulling me back to the floor. I forced myself to breathe, focusing on the figure above me. It didn't seem hostile, just lost. "Please," I shouted, but the words came out weak. In that moment, the figure stepped closer, and I saw its face, if only for a brief second. Pale skin, sunken eyes, but there was clarity there. It wasn't just a ghost-like apparition. It needed something from me. As I stumbled back, I caught my breath and scrambled to my feet. "What do you want?" I shouted, but it was too late. The figure dissipated into the shadows, leaving a lingering chill in the air. I spun around to face the hallway, realizing I had to get out, but the path I had come from felt like a distant memory. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a storm. "Help us! Find her!" I turned to run, but as I did, something caught my eye. Glinting on the floor just a few feet away was a small object. As I approached, I recognized it, a locket. Its chain was broken, half buried in dirt. I picked it up, fingers trembling. The locket felt warm against my skin, as though it had just been dropped there. I opened it, and my breath caught in my throat. Inside was a picture of a little girl, her smile radiant, but her eyes looked sad, like she held secrets. I didn't know her, but something tugged at me, a connection that surged through me. That's when I heard it again, the footsteps. They were closer now, definitely behind me. My heart hammered in my chest, and I instinctively pressed the locket to my heart. I turned to face whatever was coming, adrenaline flooding my veins. "Who's there?" I called out, voice shaking. The whispers faded, replaced by a suffocating silence. I felt the hairs stand up on the back of my neck. Then I saw them. Shadows shifting at the end of the corridor, emerging slowly. They were not alone. They moved as if drawn to the locket. The air crackled with tension. "They are looking for her," a voice rasped from the darkness, echoing like a distant thunderstorm. My skin crawled as realization washed over me. These weren't ordinary shadows. They were searching for the girl from the picture. I had to choose. I could either flee or confront whatever fate awaited me. The stakes were higher than ever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to find the girl. With the locket clenched in my fist, I stepped forward into the darkness, ready to uncover the truth. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I stepped deeper into the shadows. The whispers faded, replaced by something more tangible, an electric sense of urgency. The presence of the figures felt oppressive, like they were pulling me into their world. With every step I could feel the weight of their gaze, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The hall stretched out before me, each flickering light casting elongated shapes on the walls. "What do you want?" I called out again, this time louder, though my voice wavered. "Help us!" The voice came again, clearer now, filled with anguish and despair. It was as if the walls themselves were crying out. I could feel a chill creeping up my spine, and I resisted the urge to turn back. The further I went, the more the atmosphere shifted. The shadows shifted alongside me, swirling like smoke. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed, breaking the tense silence. I jumped, heart racing. What was happening? I turned toward the source of the noise, only to find an open door at the end of the corridor. I squinted into the darkness beyond, and just as I was about to step closer, a figure darted out from behind the door. It was a woman, her wild hair framing a gaunt face that looked as if it had seen years of torment. "Don't!" she screamed, her voice slicing through the air. "You have to leave. They will!" Before she could finish, a darker shape emerged behind her. It was an indistinct mass, almost fluid in movement. I felt it tug at the edges of my awareness. Something terrible was happening here, and I was at the center of it. "Run!" I shouted instinctively. But the shadows had encircled her, drawing her into their embrace. I could see her face contorting. The fear was palpable. But then, just as quickly, she was gone, swallowed whole by the darkness. My stomach dropped as I realized I was completely alone. The echoes of her scream lingered in my ears, a desperate plea that now felt like a warning. With trembling hands, I looked down at the locket, its warmth seeping into my palm. "Help us! Find her!" The whispers returned, now a cacophony that enveloped my mind. What had I gotten myself into? I turned to flee, but the way back was blocked. More figures stepped from the darkness, their hollow eyes fixed on me, searching. I could feel their desperation radiating, connected to the girl in the picture. Whoever she was, I had to find her. Somewhere in the depths of my mind, I knew I couldn't leave. I had to face whatever this was. But the fear that twisted my stomach urged me to run. Just as I resolved to move forward, I caught a glimpse of something sparkling on the floor beside me, a small pin, shaped like a star. I bent down to pick it up, and the moment I touched it, everything froze. The shadows paused. The whispers dimmed. Then, a cacophony returned with a violent rush. The lights flickered out altogether. I was plunged into darkness, and that's when I heard it again. The voice, now clearer, spoke softly in my ear. "Find her, and free us." As panic set in, I realized I was no longer sure of the way back. My heart raced as I tried to remember which direction I had come from. My breath quickened. I was no longer just a witness. I was part of whatever this nightmare was, and now I had to face the truth. I was swallowed by darkness. Every breath trembled in my throat. I could hardly think. The whispers had shifted from desperate cries to an eerie chant, urging me deeper into the shadows. My fingers fumbled over the star-shaped pin in my pocket, my only tether to why I was still here. Before I could decide what to do next, I heard a rustle close by. My instinct was to run, but instead I froze, straining my ears to listen. "Help us!" The voice returned, sharp and clear. A different voice this time, almost melodic, but laced with despair. I took a cautious step forward, guided by the sound. "You can't leave," another voice echoed faintly. It was almost an accusation. Was it the same woman? If so, what had happened to her? I wasn't sure if I wanted to find out. I felt like I was being pulled in two directions, one toward the safety of the exit, the other toward the haunting plea for help. As I moved, I realized the shadows were no longer immobile. They seemed to writhe and twist, pulsing like something alive. A chill swept through me as I started to see shapes form within them. Faces, mouths moving silently, as if they were shouting, but no sound escaped. Whatever was happening, I had stumbled into the heart of it. Just then, a light flickered behind me, and I turned instinctively. A narrow beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a figure standing in the doorway I had seen before. It was the woman again, her face now twisted in anguish. "Please," she said, "you have to find her before it's too late." The urgency in her voice made my heart race. I felt an unseen hand grip my throat, an overwhelming pressure that threatened to choke me. I couldn't ignore her plea. But what if I was walking into a trap? "What do you mean? Who do I need to find?" I shouted, hoping my words would pierce through the oppressive haze. Her expression shifted, sorrowful and urgent, yet the shadows behind her stirred ominously. "The girl in the locket. You are the only one who can unlock the truth. Do not let them take you." Before she could finish, the shadows surged, and another figure lunged forward, wrapping itself around her. I wanted to rush to her aid, but my body felt heavy, rooted in place as I watched helplessly. The next moment, everything shifted again. The shadows released her and she crumpled to the floor, eyes wide with fear. "You need to hurry," she gasped, and then she was swallowed once more, leaving an echo of her scream hanging in the air. I stumbled back, heart pounding. What had she meant? Was the girl in the locket trapped like her? I frantically pulled it out, holding it up to the faint light that flickered from the hallway. That's when everything got darker. The shadows closed in, stretching toward me as if they were alive. I could feel the cold air tightening around me, wrapping me in an icy grip. I had to move. Had to find the girl and end this nightmare. As I turned to run, the air suddenly shifted, thick, heavy, and charged with anticipation. I felt a presence behind me, and I knew whatever awaited in the darkness wouldn't let me escape easily. Before I could take another step, I heard a different voice, one that resonated within me. "You are chosen." I spun around, but there was nothing. Just me and the chilling darkness, a barrier separating me from whatever lay ahead. The fear clawed at my chest, but for some reason, I felt a flicker of determination. I had to find the girl. I had to free them all. Then, a faint glow appeared in the distance. I squinted, taking a few tentative steps toward it. Whatever I was about to uncover, I knew would change everything. I moved toward the glow cautiously, each step deliberate. The darkness around me felt alive, shifting with every breath. As I approached, I could see that the light was emanating from a door slightly ajar. Fingers trembling, I pushed it open just enough to slip through. Inside, the room was dimly lit, but the glow was bright enough to reveal strange symbols etched into the walls. They flickered like fireflies, and I could sense their power. I felt something pull at me, a magnetic force that urged me to step inside. But I hesitated. What if this was a trap too? Taking a deep breath, I crossed the threshold. The moment I did, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into near darkness once again. I spun around, panic rising. The symbols pulsed more violently now, casting eerie shadows across the room. "Welcome," a soft voice whispered from the corner. I turned, squinting against the dim light, and saw her, the girl from the locket. It was her face, but it was changed. Her eyes glimmered with an unnatural brightness, and a serenity wrapped around her like a shroud. "You came," she said, her voice melodic but dissonant. "I knew you would." "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky. Everything felt wrong. "I am her," she replied, gesturing toward the locket in my hand. "I am the key to breaking the curse that binds us all. You must listen." But as she spoke, the shadows behind her stirred again, forming shapes that clawed at the air. I could feel their anger, They were angry at her. "What do you mean?" I pressed, trying to hold on to my focus. "What curse?" "The whispers you hear. They are the souls trapped here. They need release, and only you can grant it." She stepped closer, but something shimmered in the corner of my vision. An ominous figure materialized, swirling with the shadows, eyes fixed on me. "Do not trust her," it hissed. The voice was familiar yet distorted, like the echoes of a nightmare. "She lies." "Listen to me," the girl urged, her eyes pleading. "You have to break the locket. Only then will you free us." "Why should I believe you?" I shouted, glancing between her and the shadowy figure. "Because," it said smoothly, "this is not your world. You don't belong here. You have another life, one you're forgetting. It's easier to let go." My heart raced. The pull of the strange figures created conflicting urges in me. I needed to make a choice, but which one? I held the locket tighter, feeling its warmth against my palm, even as the darkness pressed in around me. "Don't listen," the figure shouted, sweeping closer. "Accept what is and walk away." An icy grip seized my thoughts. I had to break free, but the urgency of my decision weighed heavily. Just then, the locket began to vibrate, an intense energy coursing through it like a heartbeat. That's when I saw it. Shimmering beyond the girl lay an open window, leading into an expanse of light, a way out. But would I risk it all? "Choose!" The shadows roared, their wrath intensifying. The girl reached for me, desperation etched across her face. "Don't let them take you." The window flickered. I could either escape or trust her, and dive deeper into the darkness. What could I lose? Everything felt at stake. I stood frozen between the radiant light of the window and the engulfing shadows that pulsed with rage just a breath away from me. Every instinct told me to run toward the light, to escape this place where nightmares roamed. But the girl's gaze held me firm, and something deep within me yearned to understand the truth she presented. "Please," she pleaded, voice trembling with urgency. "You've come this far. You can break it. You're the only one who can." The shadow figure sneered, the shadows around it writhing like angry serpents. "Break it. She wants to trap you here forever. You don't have to suffer like the rest of them. Accept your life outside. Forget about this." I clutched the locket tighter, the cool metal pulsing in rhythm with my racing heart. Memories of my life flashed through my mind. My days at the hospital, the warmth of human interaction, the laughter of friends. But what was the truth behind my choice here? The girl before me felt real. Her presence tethered me in a web of fate I had yet to comprehend. "What curse?" I shouted, desperation lacing my words. "What do you mean?" With wide, luminous eyes, the girl said, "They are bound by their despair. I was taken because I tried to help them. The locket is their connection, our connection. You can use it to set us free, to reclaim our lives." The figure snarled, closing in, trying to ensnare my thoughts with threats and fears. "You really think you have the power to change anything? You're just a visitor here, a fleeting shadow yourself." My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't just let this moment slip away. With trembling hands, I raised the locket between the two forms, illumination struggling against darkness. "You're both wrong," I declared, voice carrying the weight of my certainty. "I may be a visitor, but I can choose to fight for what's right." The figure lunged, but time and space warped around us. I gripped the locket, feeling its warmth ignite, surging through my body like an electric current. "You'll never take me or anyone else again." In that moment, the world tilted, shadows engulfing me, swirling furiously. The girl reached out, her face a mask of determination. "Focus, Lucas! Use it to free them!" I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the energy radiate from the locket like a beacon of hope. The whispers grew louder, a symphony of lost souls calling out for release. The shadows drew near, cold tendrils brushing against my skin in a last-ditch grasp. I pushed through, centering myself with a single thought: freedom. The locket burst with blinding light, illuminating the darkness around us. I could feel the shadows recoil, their forms twisting and consolidating into something concrete. The anguished faces of those trapped flickered around me, their mouths moving, but their voices merged into a crescendo. "Help us," they chorused, echoing the girl's plea. I didn't know what I was doing, but instinct took over. I threw my head back and called out, "I break this curse! I free you all!" And as those words left my lips, the locket exploded in a flash of luminescence that penetrated the darkness. The air ignited with energy, and the shades shrieked, swirling away as if pulled by a tempest. I opened my eyes, and a kaleidoscope of light erupted around me, absorbing the shadows that had once threatened to consume everything I knew. The girl reached for me, a radiant smile breaking across her features as the locket disintegrated into sparkles, dissolving into light. "Thank you," she whispered, and then she faded, melding with the radiant glow. I felt the presence of the shadows dissipate, their hold dissipating like smoke on a breeze. My heart raced as I too was drawn into the light, a single thought echoing in my mind. Was this it? Had I freed them, myself included? Or was I merely stepping into another unknown? In an instant I was back in the hospital lobby, breathless and alive. The overhead lights flickered in their ordinary stutters, casting the familiar shadows of the dimly lit room. I stumbled to my feet, fleeting remnants of the shadows still brushing at my ankles. The unfolding reality settled around me once again, though I couldn't shake off the unease tinged with relief. I gazed around, but the lobby was still eerily quiet. Where had the night gone? Who would believe the chaos I had just experienced? In those moments, I pondered the weight of the choices we make and the memories we carry, each step entwined with others long forgotten. And while the air hung heavy with unanswered questions, I felt a flicker of hope. I might not understand all of this, but I had fought through the darkness, and in doing so, I had unearthed the strength I didn't know I had. As I stepped outside, the crisp air greeted me like a forgotten friend. I looked back at the hospital, knowing I'd never be the same. The shadows might still linger in its halls, but I was free, at least for now. Whether the flickering ghosts of that night would return or whether they were truly behind me, I could only wonder. And sometimes, wondering is the beginning of understanding.